Now, are you streaming,
I'm streaming everywhere because it's Jimmy, man.
Jimmy?
Let people find him. Doesn't matter. It's going to resonate for someone, no matter where they're at.
I love it.
What's up, guys? We're live. All right. So happy Friday. Welcome to the Awakened Soul. Um, Before we get started, I just want to say if you haven't joined the Awakened Soul yet, join our group on Facebook. Feel free to invite others who are like-minded, open-minded, and looking to expand their consciousness. Make sure you get your free offer, which I put in multiple places. And if you guys want to work with Lucas and I privately, or if you want to join our course, just send us a private message and we can discuss all that. And today we have Mr. Jimmy Bluff as our special guest, which I'm very excited to have this conversation. Jimmy has some awesome stories. Before we get into that, real quick, I just want to talk about. I want to give you guys something to marinate over the weekend. You know, I spread everything very wide. Like, there's no pinning down. There's a lot of stuff that goes out because there's a lot going on, right? There's many different subjects that we're tackling in this awakening. However, we want to start landing this plane. And the bottom line is it feels like we know that we are being asked somehow, some way, from a higher power, energetically, whatever it is, we're being asked to make one decision: service to self or service to others. And I started thinking, this is the same dynamic as the narcissist and the empath. Now, we're being told, so a lot of people were always afraid to admit that they were empathic, right? And I was too. I didn't even know. I just didn't know why I always felt like this, or felt like attacked or felt pain. I was feeling everyone else's pain. I was feeling everyone else's stress. I didn't know what that meant until I understood what an empath was. And empathetic people usually attract narcissists, right? And we hear that all the time. But then I started thinking about there's a book called Give and Take, where they did a study at Harvard about the most successful people in the world. And this all ties together. So I wanted to put it in one context. So in this study, they decided to look at who are the most successful people when it comes to giving and taking. At the bottom were givers. The next layer were takers. Then there was quid pro quo. But then there was another layer on top, which is the most successful people in the world when it comes to this. And it was givers again. So you ask, what's the difference between the givers here and the givers here? These givers are giving to each other, right? These givers are just giving to the takers, and all their energy is getting taken. And the empaths are drained. And then we don't know why. Now we understand why. So I want you to start thinking about who you're giving your energy to. Are they just taking? Is that why you're depleted? Start to give to other givers. That's how we're going to change the world. So I just want you guys to think about that over the weekend, because at the end of the day, ask yourself this question: am I living my life in service to others or in service to self? And are the people around me living their life in service to others or in service to self? And then just see how that feels for you. There's no right answer. It's just see how it feels. Right?
I love it.
Anything from you, Lucas?
I love it.
Get into it.
I'm trying to figure out why we have 3 boxes on screen. So I'm listening. I'm loving it. I'm wondering if I, okay.
There we go.
Dude.
All right.
Everything you said sounded great. I was listening, but I was also going through half like, what the heck? Why is there a black box on screen? But now I know. We got
somebody had to do it.
We got Peter listening from Seattle here on Haps, which is awesome. Thanks, Peter.
Nice. What's up, Peter?
Happy Friday, fellow Seattleite. Yeah, but there's a good book called Go Giver, or The Go Giver. And it's a great book, and it talks about successful people. It's a universal law. The word in Hebrew for love is ahava. And guess what love means? To give. So the go-givers are those with the highest capacity of love and operating from that place of love and giving the highest good to every single person. That's why coming from a safety-based mindset is not based on love, because safety-based mindset is based on bracing from a threat. It's in fear. So it's only taking and creating space and forcing others to do something against their will because I need to feel safe, versus giving, saying, I will hold space for you so that you can breathe the deepest breath, expand the furthest out, and become the sovereign being that you were intended to be from the very beginning. So giving is that universal law of love, and it's beautiful.
It's amazing. I love it.
So,
and as you know, we could talk all day, but let's just get into it. Without further ado, if you guys want to see what commitment looks like, all the way from Brazil, I bring you Mr. Jimmy Bluff.
Yes. Yes. Jimmy, what's happening, brother?
In person.
Hey, man. When you when you answer the call, I got in the next flight here. So
awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah. So thank you for all you do. I'm always I always enjoy sharing stories, especially when someone has interest in hearing what I have to say. So.
Oh yeah. Well,
it's been quite the journey.
Lucas and I are very interested because as far as what you got going on, we're just dipping our toe in the water in that world. So we need some more, man. You got to educate us. We need to know what's next and what we could get into. So what do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about how we met, your actual business?
Yeah, I mean, we can
and what you're doing.
That quick. We met through my professional services.
Yeah.
I do a technique that's, I guess I explain it as metaphysical, physical, soft tissue technique called advanced muscle reconstruction surgery without the knife. Where I get in and I can kind of look at the body and figure out what's out of alignment, and then I guess particularly in a specific manner, open up the connective tissue layers and realign people is the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah, I could vouch for that because I was on my deathbed and until I met Jimmy.
Yeah, and you're doing great now. So, and I still love seeing you healthy and in shape. So, yeah, I have a huge fitness background, and I had my first experience with theta healers and angelic healers in my early 20s. And that really, steered me into the direction of healing work. These experiences were just mind-blowing. So little by little, as different synchronicities in life would happen, it just kind of became normal to me.
Yeah.
And I really couldn't talk to too many people about them other than my healers and my shamans, because most people just wouldn't understand. And I remember talking to my dad a few years ago after I threw a magazine I was in on the table, and I'm like, hey, we're in 100 countries. And he just shook his head. And so he started to understand that I was a little bit different than the typical therapist. And he just said to me, he goes, you can't talk rocket science without someone being a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with me. So it's good to be talking to rocket scientists.
Well, I could definitely admit, I remember being on that table, and there was definitely plenty of times where I was just doing the old smile and nod, because I mean, some of the stories back then for me were very new. I'm like, I don't even know what he's talking about, what world what dimensions he's going into, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But the way he told the story was so passionate. I'm like, this is cool. I want to know more.
I tell you, it's been a really long journey. I can share kind of early on, this therapist like I worked with looked off into the distance, and I'm looking with her, and she's like, you really need to see my mom. And her mom is an angelic healer. And I was always open to finding anything holistic that could educate me or heal the body naturally. And I've just kind of always been down the path and helping others. So I was always open to different information. And I took my ex-wife with me, who wasn't into any energy work or spirituality. And this woman went off into a trance, and she had me write down this message. And it was so interesting. She said, something about me being gifted with the ability to break up and release, a certain electromagnetic activity. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So But what was interesting, I went back to my office and I'm like, okay, I'll pray to angels with my background in Catholicism. We didn't even talk about any of that. I didn't really get into the church, lost my Nana when I was 12, and that really affected me. So it was crazy. I went back to my office and I had a client with cerebral palsy come in. And I got into the session, I cleared, I turned on some violin music, and it was so fascinating because the temperature in the room dramatically shifted. I wasn't on any medicine whatsoever. I noticed her and her little brother looking over my shoulder, and her little brother was a healthy, maybe 8-month-old baby, and she had cerebral palsy, so she couldn't necessarily communicate, even though I could communicate with her and understand her. And I moved along the other side of the table, and they both followed my shoulder, and I felt this. I don't even know how to explain it. Like this electromagnetic, like you get goosebumps, but it takes over your whole body to the point to where like I was just in tears. And because I'd worked so often on pro bodybuilders, my hands were typically raw and blistered. And all of a sudden, all the pain disappeared. And I started getting emotional. I was like, whoa. So I just kind of, did the work, allowed the work to be done through me. And what was so fascinating, she just kind of smiled at me the whole time. I'm peeling away layers of very painful fascial tissue. And I let them out. And her mom was a Latter-day Saint, but very spiritual, very cool woman. And I turned around when I let them out after the session, and I saw this feather hit the floor, and I heard these bird wings, what sounded like bird wings, and I heard this voice, "Do you see?" And I'm like looking around at this point, like throwing things at the roof, like, hoping that there's some bird in the rafters. So I go back to the table and I'm cleaning up the table, and I was very meticulous in my cleaning, always as a therapist. And I found a feather in the table. I'm like, all right. So I proceed to start beating pillows up in the room, like hoping one more feather is going to appear out of anywhere. I'm like, either I'm crazy or someone's trying to communicate with me. I don't know. So I go out to my car after I clean up the table, and there's feathers all over the ground. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking for birds' nests. Why are all of a sudden there are like 30 feathers? I'm not an ecologist. I have no idea. So I get in my car and I'm driving about 15-minute drive home, and it goes from 94.9 in Salt Lake City, the rock station. Normally it goes to 96.3, the other rock station. Well, it just so happened to stop at 95.5, and I hear this commercial say, "To learn more about angels, go to prophecy.com." So I'm like tripping, and at this time back in the day, I had concealed weapons, so I got my gun a little closer, like thinking I'm going to shoot something metaphysical. I don't even know what's happening. That's awesome. So I back in my garage. Like my life's a movie. I back in my garage, and I close the door and turn the car off, and I go to prophecy.com. And it listed 8 ways to know an angel's with you. And that feeling came over me, and I just started getting emotional. I was like, all right, what's happening? Because this, I've always wanted to be a conduit for others to heal. I've always been super empathic. I'm named after my dad's friend who passed in Nam as a war hero. Warriors have always been in my family, but I grew up being able to feel. My mom had severe scoliosis, so I always could feel others' pain. I just didn't want to feel anyone else's pain anymore. Yeah. I wanted to be able to do something about it. So it's a trip. So I kind of let it integrate over the week. And I said, something told me I have to go back to this store. And she had showed me this giant crystal with this crazy tree that attracted abundance. And I couldn't really afford the tree, but I'm like, maybe I'm supposed to go back and buy this tree. So I finally go back and I go to the front desk and I'm like, "Hey, do you have this tree? It attracts abundance." The woman showed it to me and they're like, "No, it's sold." And I'm like, something just told me, okay, well then why am I here? I really try not to go in these stores because I always leave broke buying some singing bowls and oh my God, sage! I don't have this sage. So, so something told me to go to the left corner, and I look up in the store. I go over to the corner and I see this angel with these swords, just like the ones I had tatted years earlier on my arm. And I look up and he's got wings, and it's silly to think about it now, but I'm like, whoa, that's me. And I carry it to the front desk, no idea who it even is. And this woman, she's like, "Oh, Michael." And again, just like the previous week, the hair in my body went up. you know, it was Archangel Michael.
That's my archangel. Did you see me get that? Did you see my reaction?
Wait,
when
he's
you said
mine.
Michael?
He can't be yours. No,
He's everyone's.
He's everyone's.
It's amazing.
So, and I started to trace all the Michaels that showed up in my life in the previous decade, and like my tat guy, people that did trade with me, like the most incredible human beings, and and even since then, Michaels that showed up. So that was my introduction to Archangel Michael. And typically I access him through my shamans or healers, and he's funny. He's very blunt, cutthroat, and very funny. But that was my introduction to, you know, calling in angels and what this is all about. And that, you know, that was a decade before I found plant medicine and masters, and I was working still in that superficial bodybuilding world where I wanted to take a superhuman and see if I could fix a chronic injury in a day, because I knew if I could do that, then children, seniors, people who've been through war, I could assist them even easier.
Right.
But man, did it lead me down a very different path. And, you know, not long after I met a shaman there, and she said, you know, I think I see you moving to LA within 6 months. And I just signed a 3-year lease on my building and just paid off all my exercise equipment. Finally had my own facility. It was ski patroller at Brighton Resort. And they even asked me to consider being a skills and training director. So my ego was like, you know, I'm booked in New York City. I could fly to LA, be booked, and I'm in Salt Lake. And I realized, like, wow, a month later I was living in LA.
Wow.
So
we plan, God laughs, right?
It's so interesting now, you know, like I said to you on the way over here, I said to my mom, like, I really don't know where God wants me, because I didn't see myself in the city of angels. And another synchronicity, it took me a year to realize, like, wait a second, LA means city of angels? And I bought a home up in Big Bear. And another synchronicity, after a year of living there, something told me to research my street name online. So Madrona Lane ended up being synonymous with Mother Mary Magdalene Lane, like Mother Goddess Lane. And Eye of the God was located half a mile from my house. And like I was finding crystals in my yard, and I was like, all right, this is a little bit different too. So, and now obviously, you know, due to like crazy circumstances, I'm in Brazil. And what's so interesting is the deeper I go into the forest and the more masters, I guess you could call them, I meet, I feel so much more at home.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect that, you know, to be able to move back here and go to the gym again and see everyone at the gym. It's just like, whoa, that's so weird. People doing the same thing every day. And, you know, I kind of just have to leave myself to like, okay, God, where are we going next? Who needs healing?
Yeah.
Because it's just opened my eyes so much. Like it's like I don't like wearing shoes anymore.
Yeah, right.
Because you get so used to feeling so good with your feet in the ground. And it's so interesting because I haven't even been all the way into the forest in Brazil yet. But even at Aldeia Acacia, where a lot of the masters come outside of Rio, you just get so comfortable with your feet in the grass and you just feel so at home. I even had deja vu. I was like, wow, I really feel home here. But how can that be? Because I don't have all these other superficial things that I think in America we're supposed to have.
Right.
So yeah, this last year was a crazy shift, and I got rid of my Ducati I just bought and a Chevelle Super Sport muscle car I just bought. And I realized, like, wow, you can actually have balance and sit on a beach somewhere else for like half the cost of some silly toy you never even have time to use.
Right.
So
well, that's the thing, right? Once we pull out, everybody's so in the bubble that they can't understand the world around them. Once you pull out of the bubble, it's like a breath of fresh air, and you go, whoa, I was doing that for that long. Why did that?
Yeah.
But it's about getting out, just even for a minute,
reprogramming yourself and your thinking.
That's a journey.
You know, and I come back and I see a lot of friends. I always like to support people over the years that support me. So I went back and got my hair cut at a certain place, and I was just sitting there. I was like, wow. I was like, you've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Whoa. And all the people on the freeways, and it's just so interesting what I was used to, even though I wasn't really used to it.
Right.
It's not like I ever felt grounded here in LA, and that's why I got the Big Bear home. But then you're cutting yourself thin, like driving in bumper to bumper traffic to go to relax. It just doesn't make sense.
I know.
So yeah,
That's amazing. I mean,
It was crazy. On my last trip, I had no expectations, and they tell you not to, especially with the ceremonies. But my previous experience with facilitators and, I guess, quote unquote American shamans who kind of travel a little bit, figure out what to do, then facilitate circles up here. So I'd had a lot of experience with that. But until I went directly to the forest, I mean, the last week I was just emotional, and I couldn't even really share my experience. And the experience I did share, Maria's like, "Don't share that." She's like, "Put that in a book, make people come find you." But that's so special. So a lot of things I really couldn't share because it'd be so over people's heads.
Right. And then you invite that low vibration troll energy.
Oh, and these are people who vibrate so low anyway.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It's one thing if it can assist people, but I have to start to judge myself from the outside looking in more and more. So I'm like, whoa, that I guess it is kind of weird. But I finally feel like I'm around people like me. That when I was down in Brazil and then I was fortunate to be up in Crestone, Colorado, near Blood of Christ Mountains, like some ancient, of course I am, working with a lot of.
You don't even have to Google the street names anymore. They're very blunt now.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's just like, all right, where are the vortexes calling me? But it's so interesting. I was up there and I was working with a gentleman who I met on my retreat last year when I first went. Down to the Arca Church with Philip Bandera. He's a psychiatrist of like 40 years, and he's been doing plant medicine 40 years. So I've been taking a program from him online, learning about the history of the civilization of all of it, psychology and spirituality. So I'm sinking my teeth in, and then next thing you know, I mean, apparently the next Avatar movie is about the Out tribe. And I tell you what, when you're on the medicine and you get to kind of that, when you train your body enough and you've purged enough to be able to handle that level of medicine and get yourself to that place in ceremony, a whole different world opens up to you. And then I had Hape from a medicine woman down there. And I'm just like outside, like, okay, I can handle this. And then I'm on my hands and knees, and I'm on my arm, and then I'm on my shoulder, and then I'm like face down in the grass, like I just give up. And I literally felt like at the one ceremony I was purging, but it's almost like I was being born. But I felt like I could have sworn until I looked at my clothes after. I had to do a change. It was amazing. I had to change my entire outfit, but I felt like alien slime was almost coming out of me. Like I'd purged. I don't even know where this stuff was coming from. And it was so interesting because in the ceremony after that, I was so content and so clear. And even though the forests were, all the masters are creating this insane energy and they're singing sacred chants. And mind you, a little history about the tribes, some of the members that were there have been on dietas for a year. So they've run strict diets. They're not, able to do anything with their partners. Like, they're so in tune. The energy was so thick. I remember sitting there, like just being like, what, like kind of nauseous, like, what is that? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the energy being created in here. Like, wow. So at the final ceremony, it felt like I was holding on to like a 10,000 or 100,000 volt fence, but I was able to stand in the force and breathe through it. And I kind of looked above and I could finally see my guides doing work on me and healing. And it kind of opened up the door to what we already know is right here. But when you're prepared to see it, and I guess you've gone through the cleansing to see it, I remember sitting there thinking like, no wonder beings don't just come visit us, because like our hair'd fall out.
I've been waiting for a moment.
Like if Yeshua or Jesus showed up, like people would probably start purging or vomiting, if not implode, because of the energy.
Yeah.
So some beings were visiting me and giving me visions and messages, and I was trying to like breathe through it. Like I was getting pumped up with what they were showing me. And I was like, okay, please just give me like 30 seconds to breathe, guys. I need help. Because every time they'd kind of come visit me and leave, it felt like I'd ran like an Ironman.
Wow.
So I had to breathe, recover. Okay, next. So it was just like ongoing receiving of these messages that I had to do like 2 weeks worth of cleansing to just be able to stand in the force. It was like fascinating to me. And it totally blows my mind. And now I get these movie makers, like apparently the Yawanawa visited James Cameron and cleansed his staff, and they actually experienced all this.
Wow.
So now you understand, like, wow, it totally made sense more and more how they produce movies and how they're so keen on all the little minute details.
Right. Well, it's funny because every time, you hear people all the time going, oh, if aliens were real, why don't they just land already? That's why.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? Like, because everybody would feel like they're holding onto an electric fence and not know why.
Well,
you had to go through years and years of a journey and then invite them in and purge beforehand.
You're on a certain diet.
Yeah. We're all living in not all of us, but we're raising our vibration, but the masses are living in a very low vibration.
Yeah. And they, through our diet, through our nutrition, and I used to think, oh, they're doing it on purpose, because most of the food here isn't legal.
Right.
I'm like looking for macaroni and cheese to save my life down in Brazil, and I can't find any.
It's not food.
It's not real food, and you're also being fed this organic food, this living food that's high energy, and it's almost a shame how much you work and research you have to do in America to find healthy habits and good habits, and and at that point you're kind of the weird one.
Yeah.
Until like more and more people wake up to like, wait, this isn't healthy.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't even giving me energy, and I'm addicted to this, and this, and those things aren't even doing me any good.
Right.
So it's such a different mindset to come back up and be in an airport and be like, wow, look at all these energy drinks and all this candy.
Energy drinks. Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's why environment's so important too. People just think they arbitrarily get sick. That's not.
No.
You're in the wrong environment. And where we are surrounded, it's really tough.
Well, absolutely. And I believe that there used to be like 3 types of wheat, and now there's like 40 or something. Right. And that's what's so cool listening to the Yawanawa chief speak. For one, it's been hard my entire life to find a mentor. I used to like really enjoy Tony Robbins and his stuff, and I actually got to work with him and fly around in his plane with him and stuff, and that was amazing. But in the energy world, I guess like they always say, your teachers find you.
Yeah.
To a certain extent. And, the Mariha, who just so happened to be here, is the first time out of the forest. And they were going to take him to the ocean. And he's like, which direction does it go? And it was so cool. Wow. Like, just this like man possessing Christ consciousness, if you will, like Jesus does. And people that, for me, I can't really get excited about meeting anyone anymore, or who would I want to work with?
Right.
But meeting these masters did that for me, where you're like, wow, you possess from a young age. Most of the stuff they learn, aside from the masters and their tribes, which, with the Shipibo was 4,000 years of bloodlines. Right. So listening to him talk about the true history, I just sat there and cried. And, you're like, oh my God, everyone wants all this gold. Like, where did it come from? Who do they take it from?
Right.
And it was so wild listening to the stories with Nixie Waka. Like, they're taught in their dreams. They're on strict diets, and a lot of the plants that they're ingesting are communicating with them in their dreams. So they have 3,000 different plants and things in the forest that all has a specific purpose. It's like the only people left that possess truth are the indigenous.
Right.
Like, what are we doing? Yeah. And I'm looking at Maria, my wife, and I'm like, I think they're judging me, because I get judged like I look military because I built so much muscle over the years just to be better at my job. And I, with the bodybuilding and all my tattoos, and they were looking at me kind of crazy as I was there. And then as I met the Mariha and I gave him respect, I said, I'm a healer. And all of a sudden, like, they just look like, wait, what? And he referred to me as a medicine man. And I did my first private treatment with him. And he actually broke up the tissue similar to the way I do, but he breathes in energy. And for some people, he was like spitting out objects after breathing in energy. And I was so fortunate enough to have a private session, it just so happened, with him during the final ceremony after all that cleansing I did, where, Putney, who's his understudy, who is like the first female page in the forest, the Yawanawa tribe are empowering their women, even the tribes.
Yeah.
It's shifting from the inside out, the empowerment of women. So she's this powerful leader that was communicating with me between us, and she's learning from him. So just to be in these people's presences is mind blowing. And she said, I met a man like you once, and we wanted him to come to the forest, but he passed away before he could get there. Because a lot of healers, we take on disease and we don't even realize.
Right.
Before in my career, I was told I had to protect myself, and I was like, oh, okay. So I saged and, did my things. But little by little, you're just taking on everyone's stuff.
Right.
I remember working on power lifters, and like we're listening to like Metallica and The Offspring and Tool, and I'm crying because I'm getting electrocuted by this large man of a client. He doesn't know I'm crying, right, but I'm releasing, and I'm like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Wow. So finally meeting masters who are teaching me at this point in my career, I'm like, I'm like a kid in a candy store.
Right, because now you know how to release and you're not carrying it around.
And protect. And she's like, keep people's energy out here. And everything she said was just so dead on. And I was so thankful. So she said, he can consecrate your hands. And I'm like, consecrate my hands? Like, yeah. She's like, so they'd be actual, sacred healing instruments. I'm like, I want that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing, and it's interesting, since my hands have been consecrated, I used to not like have like like an anger towards them or whatever, but there's not really anything else in my career I could or I would want to do. But that doesn't mean I'm not working on a client in a swanky building and he just makes $100,000 on the phone doing a deal as I'm sweating, and releasing pain. But I'll tell you a story. Aside from Chloe, my client with cerebral palsy, I had a gentleman come in who just gotten out of a month-long pain clinic for the military. And he was behind enemy lines. He was a medic, and something about his carabiner didn't catch. So he fell out of the helicopter a couple stories on his back. And he was a real beefy guy. So finally, I figured out on the second or third session, like, I need to open up his chest. I need to open up his psoas, his ribs. And he looks at me, and they had him on like 10 oxys a day. And he's like, I don't want to be an addict. I'm like, you're not an addict. You're just trying to survive. We need to release this pain. So like the third or fourth session, all of a sudden we open him up and he's like, I'm not in pain. So he sends his mom. So I laugh because at this time I was like 40 pounds heavier, at a mohawk, blonde, a bodybuilder. And this cute little old lady walks in with permed hair, and she looks at me and she's like, I don't know about this. And I started laughing, and I said, your son is very special to me. I served the military. I'm a mama's boy. I said, I'm booked out a month and a half. And I said, but let's give it 10 minutes. We can keep going if you like it. If not, no harm, no foul. And we get working together, and she's a Jehovah's Witness, and I always am fascinated with people's beliefs. I'm kind of middle of the road on everything. And I get chatting with her, and it feels like she's been in a car accident where really I found out her husband just passed away. And she's been really distraught because she used to walk around the block with him every morning, and she hadn't been able to. So I get in there and I'm arguing with her about her beliefs a little bit, and we get finished, and she books another one, which I'm like, oh, okay. All right. We'll see if, that happens. So a week later comes around, and I hear a knock at the door, and I go up and I open it, and this woman looks at me, all makeup, brand new haircut, and a brand new little plush jumper. And she's like, I've been thinking about you. And at this point, like, I look behind me and I'm like, who the hell is this woman? And I, got the table ready. I'm in washing my hands, preparing for the session. And I just start crying. And I'm like, why am I emotional? And I realized, and this was like 8 or 9 years ago, it was just pure raw gratitude for me showing up, doing everything I could for her for the time that we had together. And that was enough for her to be able to do what she needed to in life, and also empathize with her and understand why she was so distraught. And I've always looked at all my clients as family, but I've had some really special cases early on in my career where I was like, wow, I don't care what I have to do or the pain I have to experience to get someone feeling that way. I'll do it, because we heal. Healing others heals us as well, so.
Well, we talk about all the time. If one person's suffering, we're all suffering.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more it's interesting because the times that I've been really happy and excited, I've noticed as I come back and visit, I'll have doctors I've worked with in the past or like the body heals itself or say something really mean to kind of knock me down. It's like, geez, I was in a good mood for the first time this week, and that's different now. But back then you're in a random good mood and someone tries to like swipe it from you and you're like, wow, you're really unhappy, aren't you? Yeah. That was totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's wild, not watching the news for a month or two at the time and turning it on and like, that's what you're selling me,
Well, once you step back and then you watch it again, that's why. So I don't watch it at all. Obviously I've seen behind the curtain. I've been in Hollywood for over 10 years, goodness. Actor producing movies, and
it's impressive.
So I understand how they do what they do, but I don't watch the news or the media. But when you see these things come through like here and there, I'm just like, wait, people are buying it. Like it's so obvious. Like I feel like the whole world turned into a WWF.
It really has, and that's why I think now more than ever, obviously they talk about the suicide rates and the addiction rates, and I don't think a lot of people know how to change their living and how to change their daily routine, and that's why going on a diet and giving up coffee and lovemaking and so on and so forth, and then going to these ceremonies away from your daily routine,
comfort zone,
and then just purging what no longer serves you, and then realizing as you're sitting there, like, wow, a lot of this stuff hasn't been serving me. Why am I living here? Why am I doing this?
Right. It's a hard question to ask. A lot of people don't want to ask that question, which is why we're in the position we're in. I didn't want to ask that question. I avoided it for years and years, man, until I was in a position where I was a dead fish on your table.
Yeah.
I was on my deathbed, man.
Yeah, I know.
Because I tried to live in ignorance. I did not want to admit that my life was upside down.
Well, you're just trying to keep up with everyone else. And even like I said, yesterday morning at the gym, and watching all these people lift weights and like, then they're going to eat every hour or 2 hours the entire day. And I'm like, wow, that's such a different life than I used to lead. And moving forward, I really didn't know what my passion was supposed to be. I know I love healing people and providing service to others, but man, I tell you, over the last few years, like, you start to question, like, is this the right dimension for me? You know what I mean? And,
dude, I know.
And now that I've found, these masters in the forest, it's given me a completely different outlook at night. And also helped me realize now more than ever, it's time for people to wake up and, get happy again and get back in a routine and a life they really enjoy. Most people don't realize like they can't create the life of their dreams.
Right. Yeah. I say all the time, I mean, if time is an illusion and everything's happening simultaneously, we get to choose our reality. So there's hell on earth and there's heaven on earth. It just depends if you look that way or you look that way.
Your perspective.
Because I'll be at the park with my son and he's playing with a puppy and another kid. And I'm like, this is heaven on earth. And then if I look over there and see the helicopters over the riots, I'm like, well, that's hell on earth.
Yeah.
Literally right there.
Yeah.
Somebody watching the news all day in their living room is choosing hell on earth because it's creating fear. And I'm right next door at the park with the sun, me and Tyler have our bare feet in the grass every day with our dog running around. I'm like, that's heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah. Right there. You just choose.
Yeah. They talk about, avoidances and addictions or whatever Tony did. And it's so interesting because Maria's like, oh, you need to do this and this so we can get married down here in Brazil. And it was like some busy work. And I'm like, I'd rather go over to the crystal store and like wash my car before I get on the phone and sit on hold with some person for an hour. It's just how my mind works.
Right.
But
to do paperwork.
Yeah. Just different avoidances. And I remember I used to turn the news on and like, all right, what's going on Tucker tonight or whatever. And you just get so pissed off and angry. and then you get addicted to being pissed off and angry.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Absolutely.
And side note, it almost seems like there's a large amount of people, and I used to be one of those people that was like happy being unhappy.
Well, yeah, and like comfortable. That's
so
your
you're
comfort
like,
zone
I feel like
in
crap,
that
so I'm going
right?
to go buy another bottle of wine tonight because I like feeling like crap. Like, that doesn't make sense.
But it did for so long, right?
So,
Yeah.
Jimmy, let me ask you this: when did the medicine start calling you? When did the plants start calling? Because that a lot of people, I think, jump into that world prematurely, or they think it's recreational. But the sacred calling, really, yeah.
You know, I was introduced to it a couple years ago. One of my real good friends had a really beautiful experience in a mushroom ceremony. And that was my introduction. I did a handful of those ceremonies around the country, and it blew my mind. Apparently, we can only see 1% of the color light spectrum.
Right.
And, you know, the mushrooms, and I'd never done any psychedelic in my life, growing up in law enforcement type family, whatever, never.
Right.
So, and I'm so happy this is how it was, you know, getting decked out in all white and being in ceremony, and I could never really slow my mind down. But as you're laying there, I guess the first ceremony, I was stiff as a board for 3 hours, but I was traveling like light years. And I remember asking, my intention was to look through Jesus's eyes. I just need to know what he saw and what was going on. You know, still kind of confused and pissed off about the whole religion thing after learning the truth. Like, wait a second, I'm kneeling to the people that technically killed him and giving them money? This doesn't make sense. We won't go there. But
bingo. Yep.
I walked outside and I saw the Earth's energy grid. I was in the Catskills, New York, and I'm looking at every star had energy connected to it. And I'm looking at this energy grid over Earth. And I looked beyond the energy grid, and I swear I could just pick out this giant aircraft carrier from like looking like Star Wars ships just chilling there. And I'm sitting there shaking my head. And a lot of times in ceremonies, I can see people's energy and tracers and everything. And I've not experimented much because it all terrifies me. And that's why I will only practice with shamans and indigenous now. I won't even necessarily practice with practitioners up here after my experiences and what I've been through. It's just, you know, to me, when you're practicing with plant medicine and sacred medicines, you need, at least for me, a very strong container to hold the energy, and one very pure, full of light. Because there are otherwise people want to benefit ego-wise from you or money-wise or whatever. And I've just found for myself, the indigenous, they don't care about any of that.
Right.
They just want to be love and rock out. So that was my first experience to it. And then I remember meeting a man who looked like Zeus, and we were about to do our first Aya ceremony, and I've never done it before. And man, am I so happy I didn't do that first. And he said, you know, I normally don't bring my medicine bag, but would it alarm you if I was told it's for you? And I said, no, man. I said, I'm on a path. I said, let's do this thing. And he was a Bufo practitioner.
Wow.
A doctor of 30 years. And he said, a lot of my clients who used to see me weekly, one Bufo experience, they never need to see me again. So
that's the toad, right?
So that's the toad. So the next morning after everyone goes home, I proceed to basically come out of my body. And I'm like an electron floating around, like looking at the sun coming in the window, like realizing like, oh my God, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here. And then I heard breathe, and I'm like, damn it, I'm still a human, you know, but it allowed me just that short amount of time to where I was just like, wow, you know? So as you said before, heaven and hell are the same place. Back to my story where I was like laying face down in the grass, purging my guts out. And apparently all the pages were around me. They're like, uh-oh, the big guy's down. What should we do? And letting me go through my process. Mind you, it was like freezing cold, and I thought I was like really hot. So my body was just getting rid of stuff. And I sat up, and I'm like laying there, and like at this point in my head, I was an archangel, like down in the grass, like looking around, and I was in the kingdom of heaven. And I was just like, mind you, you know, from the outside looking in, I'm a dude wearing all white with vomit all over myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's also a Saturday night in Hollywood for everyone. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
fit right in.
A good Saturday
You know
night.
what I mean?
But it was so amazing. And then another gentleman named Zhao, they call the White Page, was there, and he's simple and he's quiet and he speaks in Portuguese, so everything's translated. But he'll say something and like sounds like jibber jabber, and I always laugh because he's dropping like insane wisdom bombs.
Wow.
Like, you spend 30 minutes with some of these gentlemen, and you swear you just downloaded a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he said that he wanted to do a healing on me. And, you know, I haven't experienced his full power, but I've had so much respect and curiosity. So somehow or another, I get 60 feet out of the grass over to the couch, and he starts with his shaker. And it feels as I'm laying there, like an Apache helicopter wings is firing up. And I'm just sitting there looking at sacred geometry with the medicine, you know, even after all the purging, the hape is supposed to kind of ground you. And I'm just doing everything I can to just hang on for his healing. The first time I've ever seen him in action. And it was the most mind-blowing. It's almost like 50, 60 mile an hour winds are being created out of nowhere.
Wow.
And the gentleman to my right, who's another guardian, in fact, he actually shared with me after ceremony that he saw me in ceremony 2 years ago. He saw a vision of me. And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw you, big white dude." He goes, "I prayed for you." Wow. And he laughs nonchalantly. He's like, "Took you long enough to get here." And I'm like, what is happening? Yeah. Being around these men that I could only have ever dreamed of learning from.
Right.
So he's over there smoking tobacco, keeping all the energy from me clear. After Zhao was done with my healing, Maru pulled his own socks out of his bag. I couldn't put my own socks on. I was so energy drained. Like this man is like putting socks on me, and it took me another 20 minutes before I could finally muster up enough energy to just walk 100 feet back into the circle. And at that point in time, it just so happened that the Yawanawa chief was doing blessings on the attendants. So I walked back in after feeling like I've been through war, you know, archangel down in the grass. And I can feel 20 feet away where I'm sitting, him doing his healings. So I just laid down, and it's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like you're laying on a bass speaker. But it's 20 feet away. It's just mind-blowing. And then it came my turn to go up, and he went and did a private healing on me as well. So it was bananas. And then the following day, I scheduled a private session with Wakia Unmani, who did all our Anipis for us, this Lakota practitioner. He practices a lot of the Lakota ways. He's been in like 40 movies in Hollywood, and apparently Johnny Cash put him through college to help out, a lot of the indigenous kids who get misplaced. Like,
it's funny we never heard that Johnny Cash story. Like, why don't they tell these stories? Just
insane. These people who are like, what do you do? And they're just like a world of someone that they're just sitting there, just relaxed, with their feather, but they're masters. So yeah, that was my first introduction about 2.5 years ago. And I went to Lake Atitlan with that gentleman. And then little by little discovered that I was outgrowing these so-called American masters who in one way or another kind of wanted to be my partner, because I've always done healing work, but they're, they have gifts here and there, but mostly just practitioners. So it wasn't always full of light, their right intentions, I found. So yeah. Sitting with the indigenous, it's just, I tell you, I'm sitting there like, this is necessary. I used to think like after high school, everyone should go to the military for 2 years to get their head pulled out of the rear ends. Like, it could be worse.
Right.
But now I'm like, no. I'm like, first they need to go to the forest.
It's funny. I used to think everybody should move to New York City for 2 years. But after hearing this story, it's the same thing. It's like, no, wrong.
No.
Everybody should maybe get grounded in the earth first.
And I tell you, it was so crazy. The first week, there was this giant spider behind the mirror in our bungalow. And I looked at Maria and I was like, yo, I don't know about this. And she's like, honey, there's probably 1,000 around us. And I'm like, you're not helping.
At all times.
And she's like, this is their place. you know? So
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, you're right. She's like, just have your guides protect you. And I'm like laughing, like, who is this woman that is so perfect for me? And I went to sleep. You know, normally in the past, you know, especially in America, we'd light the whole house on fire, and people's comments as I shared a picture were hilarious. They're like, "Oh hell no," you know.
Yeah.
And then the next night, I saw it behind a post, and I was like, "I can still see you," but you realize like this is their land.
Yeah, and then you go Google spiders. Like, why does he keep coming in my
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It turns out it was really poisonous,
You know
but
what I
yeah.
mean?
Well, no, but I do that too, and
I do that all the time.
Hummingbirds,
Yep.
and I've seen
Hummingbirds
eagles.
all the time.
Yeah, dragonflies have a really specific meaning. So, you know, certain times, 222, 1111, it's so interesting. Even in LA, I remember listening to the last Breaking Benjamin album, and it was all about angels. And I remember coming out, and I used to go to the gym super early in the morning, and I get in my car, and it was like 4:44, and a feather hit the windshield, and then Breaking Benjamin came on, and I started crying, and I was like, what's happening? And then I get to the gym, and most people are pretty angry in the morning, but there's one friendly guy who's like, hey, what's your name? And like, of course, this gentleman's name was Gabriel, you know, or Michael.
Michael's friend, Gabriel.
It's like when you look around, you're like, oh, all right, I'm still doing something right.
Where's Gabriel? North, south, east, west? Michael's south, right?
I'm not even
I
sure.
don't even know.
It'd be easier if they could just text me like, "Oh, you're being a dumbass," you know.
Well, that's the thing. And
get back on the path, you know.
That's what we want. That's what we all want, right?
Yeah.
However, it's more fun this way, really. The universe is always communicating with us, always. But we have to read between the lines. We have to look for the signs. We have to ask, and then go, that's not an arbitrary butterfly in this moment.
Yeah.
What is this
definitely not
communicating?
Absolutely. And case in point, you know, when things happen in your day that change last minute. I had my flights up here a few weeks ago totally destroyed because apparently Dallas gets snow now. Thanks, China. No, I'm just kidding. But messing with our weather. But it's crazy. So this sweet woman couldn't believe how nice I was. And I'm like, happy, you know, I'm like, get to the airport, like totally centered. And she's like, wow, you're so relaxed considering like we ruined your day. And the first guy was trying to send me to, instead of getting in at noon, I would have got in LA at midnight. And I'm like, well, how am I going to get to Salt Lake? And he's just looking at me like, well, that's up to you. And I'm like, is this how airlines work all of a sudden in 2021? So this next woman was so sweet. She after I left, went and continued looking for flights. So by the time I walked to my gate, a woman looks at me. She's like, is your name James? And I'm like, that's a little creepy. She's like, well, they explained what you were wearing. I'm like, I don't want to know what they explained, how you knew what it was. And she got me these badass flights instead. And it just so happened when I stepped on the airplane, this really sweet blonde woman, she's looking at me. She's like, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, am I dressed a little silly and eccentric? And she's like, I love your crystals. She's like, have you ever seen the movie Heal, the documentary Heal? And I'm like, I have. Well, it just so happened this flight attendant, totally different flight that I would have been on, was one of the people who overcame stage 4 cancer in the Heal documentary. Wow. So I have these people next to me in Chicago that the whole time were like snuggling. And I swear, once her and I started going down the rabbit hole, they moved closer and closer away from me. But it was amazing being able to talk to someone. And I said, you know, oh my God, I'm so grateful just to have this 10-minute conversation. And she goes, you know, because of people like you, because I just told her I'm in the healing arts. She goes, because of people like you is why we're here. Yeah. Why I'm still alive. And I'm like, wow, I have a lot of respect for Western medicine, obviously, but, you know, it's not fair that we don't have access to real holistic medicine.
All those 2,000 plants that you're talking about, does insurance cover that?
Because it doesn't make money. It's just like, oh yeah, what do I have on me?
Because it actually heals.
Yeah, what do I have on me that, you know, is illegal at the moment? You almost have to ask yourself before you get in your car. Like, oh yeah, they don't tax that. So it's luckily I don't.
Well, alcohol, just drink responsibly, but cannabis is a Schedule 1 narcotic because it's a gateway drug. I say it is a gateway drug. It's a gateway to the truth.
Yeah. I started smoking the first time I ever smoked marijuana. I was like 26. And I was working like 80-hour weeks, personal training, and just running around crazy. And I remember like being relaxed for the first time. And I'm like, this is what this does?
Right.
Holy crap.
Why are they hiding this?
Yeah.
I'm so exhausted.
Yeah. And it became a proponent to that every so often to relax. And I tried the Western medical route. I didn't even know how to drive a car. And at first I was like, oh my God, antidepressants, this is going to make me happy. Why didn't I hear about this sooner? But they just shut my brain off. And from what I understand, a lot of times they can, disconnect your connection to source.
Yeah.
I felt like a vegetable to the point to where I was debating whether I didn't want to be a burden to my parents any longer. I went from Mr. Utah to making, $200,000 a year when I was 25, 26 to signing a very bad business deal. Next thing you know, I'm at home and I didn't know how to drive my car. I thought I was retarded. And so I had that. And that's especially why that was before I trademarked my technique, because of those experiences. After I joined Ski Patrol, they gave us a mass casualty Rahe-Dom stress test, which is a numerical score, 0 to 100, 100 to 200, or 300 or above. You can't even have normal relationships. And I remember thinking, like, why aren't they giving everyone these tests like every other month? I was like a 985 on this test, which is triple like your life is full of chaos, So most of us are dealing with situational stress, and a lot of stress that we're dealing with isn't even ours. It's boundaries we allowed others to cross. And I remember a couple years ago, one of my celebrity clients, their assistant, like frantically messaged me. She's like, I need you to itemize every time you've ever seen my client. Da, 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 da. And I reminded her, I go, I've got clients all day, and that's not my job. That's your job. And I kind of handed her that anxiety and that energy back. And I was like, wow, maybe 5 years ago I would have taken that on. But no, not being rude. That's just, you can pay me to do that for my time, but I'm pretty sure that's why they pay you. So it's interesting. And in certain places like Brazil, where you only see a handful of people before your destination, compared to, coming over here where everything went fine, but you could have 5 or 10 or 20 interactions with people who aren't conscious of their energy at any given point in time. That makes it hard to have a good day when someone's telling you you're an asshole for no reason. Excuse my language.
Right. Well, do you find that this is happening more and more? Because I actually had the same experience too. I think as we raise our vibration and kind of shift our consciousness, and we don't invite, like in the beginning, I was like, I'm not wearing a mask because I don't believe in it, and everybody. But I was inviting that feedback loop.
Yeah.
So when I started allowing people, you know what? If that's their choice, I'll allow them their choice, and then they will in turn feedback loop around, allow me mine, and now nobody bothers me. Like I flew up to Seattle to see Lucas. When I got on the plane, I was wearing a Peanut Butter Falcon shirt, and I walked on. My
favorite movie. Every time I travel, I'm like, have you seen this? No. I've watched it like 5 times. That's all my friends, dude. It's amazing.
So great. But I'm wearing the shirt, and the flight attendant was like, oh my God, I love that movie. I was like, oh, thanks. She's like, they make shirts. I was like, well, I was one of the producers. She's like, oh, it's so cool. So then she came over to my seat later on in the flight, and I don't wear a mask. I just don't. But they make silly rules, so I played by them. I just carried a water bottle and some snacks.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It's bonkers. But anyway, I was sitting there, and I ended up having like an hour-long conversation with the flight attendant, who came over to me, and I just kept my hoodie, kept to myself. I don't want to start trouble.
Right.
But I put my hoodie, and I had a window seat, and I'm over like this.
Yeah.
And I came up to have a snack, so I came up, and she saw me, and she came to talk to me about the movie and stuff, and. I said, I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to hold my water bottle because I don't feel comfortable speaking to you through a mask.
Yeah.
And I'm, if the rules are the rules, she goes, oh my God, you don't have to worry about me. Yeah. She's like, it's so refreshing to meet someone like you. Yeah. Like, I feel like I'm surrounded by crazy people. Yeah. We ended up having an hour-long conversation, and she goes, I don't understand why people don't get it. And
it's fear. People, and there's been dozens of times where I went to say something online that I just deleted it.
Yeah, I do that sometimes too. I don't do that enough.
What you talked about,
do that sometimes.
What you discussed before, Lucas, the opposite I've been told of love is fear.
Fear.
It's in the same chakra, So It's interesting. I try to be as understanding as I can, but man, it's tough when you're trying to breathe through a mask and you know the science behind it, and you can like vape through your mask and like breathe vapor out your mask. It's and, you know, when it comes to like, oh no, you need to make me feel safe.
Right.
Oh, okay. Well, then why can't I have a gun on my hip? Does that make you feel safe too? You know.
Right.
So I made the mistake. An incredible human being who did an article about me, Kevin Edwards in the Wayne Independent, posted something, you know, last year. Is like, what do you think about masks? And I said, well, if you're scared to go out, stay home. If you want to wear a mask, do it. If you don't. And I had a bunch of people agreeing with me, but then the fear mongers got on, and and they were mad. They were angry that I had a different viewpoint on it. And
or are they angry with themselves? Because deep down, we all know this is unnatural.
Totally. So it's just, So I remember like him apologizing to me after the bombardment. And I said, I shouldn't have opened my mouth.
Yeah.
You know, and now I try to be even, you know, so much more careful with my energy to just, it's not worth.
Yeah.
You know, but I always try to wear it, you know, especially if I need to for work guidelines, you know, whatever. But I'm doing everything I can year round, unlike some people with the Cambo medicine and the tobacco cleanses and all these different things. So I can bring more light through, let alone just stay healthier for people. But it's amazing the lengths people this year have gone to. And a lot of people still in fear.
Right.
You know.
But it's changing every day. I feel like a light switch turns on every day, more and more and more and more. We're gaining momentum. And it's because of stuff like what you're doing. I mean, you could hold space from Brazil for the entire country of America. Boy, you could send light. I'm sure you guys.
A couple nights I felt like I was. I tell you, and that's a couple times where I was just like, "What am I doing here?" And I got on the phone with my healer. She's like, "No, this is where you're supposed to be." And then a couple things happen where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." Even though from others looking in, the outside looking in, it doesn't make sense. It's been amazing, and I realized, you know, all the things that I've ever wanted to be able to grow my spirituality and tap into a source of truth and light. It's been there all along for us. Yeah. And now that I can be a bridge for people to come down and really experience that, and with my own work, as they're doing their sacred medicine, be able to completely have a new body and new range of motion and alignment. It's hard to almost come back and put shoes on and work in an office, you know, when you can be in that setting, looking at waterfalls.
It's funny because Lucas and I have been talking about putting together a retreat, and I spoke with you about it too. It sounds like the perfect thing for us to build that retreat and come to you. Yeah. And it's so easy. We can balance it with the stuff that Lucas and I do, and then introduce some of the more mild stuff that people are ready for, and we meet people wherever they're at. Right?
It can be your retreat with you guys having things to speak about every day, and they already have it set up. You know, 90-minute drive from Rio up to Aldea. The food is provided. The property is just. I swear, like if a pterodactyl flew over, I'd be like, "Well, that's cool," you know, like
right. It's just
I'm like, where are we? You know, it's just so magical. I'm sitting in the sauna they built, and then jumping in the waterfall in between. It'd be easy. It's already set up for you. You know, whenever you're ready, I would love to come down. And I'm really excited for the forest to open back up in the future. Net and Sui Shapibo has been wanting me to come there and help him build a little fitness center, because they've got like 200 soccer teams, and now a lot of the tribes, some of them are going professional.
Nice.
And obviously I'm supposed to go to Nixie Waka's birthday party. He told me I was summoned, which is cute. He's like, if I ask you, you can say no, but since you're summoned, you don't have a choice. And I'm like, well, that just makes it easy, doesn't it? And the Madiha, they're looking to raise money for a boat and an engine, a canoe and an engine. And I told them that I'd like to get a GoFundMe going. I didn't even talk to you about that.
Yeah, let's figure it out.
So he could leave the forest more and heal. But no, I'm so happy finally to have made the connection, whether in the future it's safe to bring them here and do it in a sacred ground, or have you guys come there. Man, I can't even explain to you.
Well, let's call it in. It's going to happen. Hey, Donald wanted to know, can you just elaborate a little bit on the tobacco cleanse?
Yeah, with the Shipibo tribe, we did, and apparently they'll do it I think starting at 8 years old and 15, you drink organic liquid tobacco. And it's exactly what it sounds like. And you drink about 14 glasses of water and you just purge out all the impurities of your body. It kind of goes in and purges out. So basically you can't get sick, they say, in the forest. It's how they've been, cleansing their bodies from the beginning of time. I've been doing Cambo as well, which they say 1 round of Cambo, it's like a peptide that goes in your blood. And again, you purge out and it cleanses. And each treatment is supposed to up your immune system like 300-400%. And if you do 3 in a moon cycle, it's like a forest vaccine. You're just like spinning and feel light on your feet. And it's amazing when you've had stomach issues, digestion issues, and your food sensitivities, to finally feel your stomach tight and not bloated by the food that we eat. And a lot of stuff they're putting in foods now, they're changing the name, and the stuff that binds the food is creating issues.
It's really hard to find a pure product that you can, I mean, because even like gluten-free this or that, there's still soy and there's canola oil and everything, and there's all these preservatives.
And dairy and
dairy everywhere.
And I was down there and one of the masters told me, he's like, you can't have gluten anymore. I was like, well, what am I supposed to eat? Because I don't know about you, but I have my soup with my bread and butter, not the other way around. So it's, especially coming from a bodybuilding background, I'm like, really? I have to sacrifice more?
Right.
We
might be going to a place where food is non-existent, right? I mean,
eat the sun. I mean, there's
people that are sun doing it. They're doing it.
I don't know how
already.
I'm going to maintain 250 doing that, but I'll figure it out, I guess. But yeah, it's been such a great time chatting with you guys, and please.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. It sounds like we're gonna have to have you back for another one.
Oh, I'd love to.
Because we barely scratched the surface here.
We didn't even. Oh, my stories hopefully weren't too crazy. I'd get even crazy.
No, brother. Thank you. People need to hear this earth has everything that we were intended to live with and live on. And the story you're talking about, glowing and that energy, I just don't want to take too long sharing the story, but Moses, who wrote the Torah, who we have Jesus based on all his teachings, based on the Torah, the Old Testament. Moses, before he does anything, before he goes to Mount Sinai and gets the downloads from God on the mountain, before any of that, he marries a woman whose father was the high priest of the Midianites, Jethro. And Jethro, the Midianites, worked with the acacia tree. And that's what their sacred plant was. And the Midianites live today. They're called the Druze in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And so they're in Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel. And the Druze exists today. And that Moses got taught by a master in the wilderness. And I really believe that the tree that was on fire, but then it burned, was the acacia tree where God spoke to him.
Yeah.
These plants are so sacred. And I think a couple things. I love what you're sharing, because you're talking about the plants and broadening people's awareness to what is available. My first plant anything was Aya. I sat and started, not cannabis, nothing. Went straight to the mother.
It was rocket launcher.
It was not. But learning that humanity's also going to learn in this next phase what sacredness is, what sacred space is, what sacred body is, what sacred time is, and food. And when we get to that place, and it's coming, it is going to be glorious. And I just love hearing your story, because here you are, a big stallion of a man. You're talking about rolling on the ground and that humility. And that's what it is. It's that beautiful humility.
Well, it's amazing. Prior to rolling on the ground, I was in front of the fire, and I didn't know what to give. I didn't have organic tobacco. So I gave my hair as an offering. And I just said to the fire, take whatever is no longer mine to carry. And I give myself to you in this mission. And apparently, and I was so heavy on the medicine, the hape, I didn't quite know who was around me, but I was crying, and I had dirt in my hands and was on my hands and knees, barefoot, dirt, just vulnerable as I could be. And apparently to my left was Wakia with his feather, who is also speaking to the fire, that I later found out. It's just like Michael Jordan, like, hey, can I jump in, shoot some free throws with you? And to my right was a gentleman who was actually filming. He got permission to film one
there
of the.
Yeah, boy.
So I think being able to be in a place where you can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Real quick story. My last trip up to the States in December, I was at a bar with my doctors and we'd had a couple drinks and a gentleman came over to me and was interested in who I was and what I did. And I'm looking up, talking to him, and he had a bunch of drinks in him and he starts talking about the war and how he had shot people, and he starts crying, and his friend's like, well, I think I'm going to let you two talk. And I'm sitting here like, we going to do this right now? And I chatted with the gentleman in the bar because he was able to make himself vulnerable enough, saw me as an alpha that he could confide in, because I've been told I'm very feminine balanced. I've been working on that a long time.
Yeah.
And held space for him as he released all this disease, if you will, that he took on that wasn't his to take on at a bar. And it was like, my friend after's like, yo, that was heavy, huh? And I'm like, that was amazing, like to go to a bar and be able to get deep with someone who's been holding on to trauma for 10 years, creating all sorts of issues, self-sabotaging relationships, all this stuff that he didn't know where to go to speak to anyone. So it's cool, I have the backwards thing in my head where I'm still the skinny guy from high school or whatever. So I have to remind myself that I'm a little bit bigger in stature. And it's beautiful when I can, run into male clients who feel comfortable just being themselves and understanding like, it's okay. You're allowed to freaking cry. Like, get that crap out of you.
Right.
And I don't have a problem sharing my stories, because it's one or two or a handful of messages people send you like, hey, dude, that really meant something to me. Can we talk about this? Or do you have that resource I can have? That's why I'm here.
Right. And that's more valuable than any monetary number you could put on anything. That's what I found.
Hey.
One person saying, wow, you gave me a different perspective and it really changed my life or changed my relationship, or I'm doing something different now and I feel better.
Yeah.
That's better than any paycheck I've ever received.
But like you said, the sacred thing, actually being able to do something that you consider sacred, like, where is that anymore? And we lost all our trust with the churches. We're like, what the hell are we doing here?
Right.
So to be able to find your soul and be reintroduced to your soul that maybe you didn't even realize you lost all along, and getting what you call your power back and releasing the hold on that throat chakra so you can speak your truth. It's waiting for you. It's waiting for you. And I have finally found people that can hold space. I mean, most of the masters down there they're psychologists and anthropologists. Like, I'm like, you're what? It's really cool to be around such incredible people. So yeah, any of your listeners who are in severe chronic pain, I've got incredible resources myself, other professionals around the country. Anyone who's been through just a lot of emotional trauma, a lot of physical trauma, please hold on. Please hold on. I've had clients admit after working with me a few weeks that they had already done their will and had enough liquid painkiller to clear out the block in Hollywood. And as far as I know, he's still kicking.
Yeah.
Just because of some minor pain that I found and some others that could assist with. So nothing is ever too big. And I think a lot of people don't understand a lot of the trauma they've been through is because most people don't know how to give love, and most people don't know how to receive love.
Yep.
So
that's the bottom line. Really.
If you look at, and it's really hard to look at this, but I explained to one of my male clients whose dad used to get physical with them, and I said, you realize that was his messed up version of showing you love.
He didn't know other way.
It just wasn't very good, because that's how he was showing, and it blew his mind up at like 40 or 50 years old, where he was like, wow, I never realized that. And he could look at his father from a different standpoint. So I love watching people heal, man. I love getting deep with people, and it's almost hard, like I said before, to come up here and not be in high energy places around high vibration people, because unless I'm in treatment with someone, like I don't want to be around low vibes.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brother, you're such a beautiful soul. Thank you.
Man, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit.
Thank you so much for coming, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
This has been amazing. We definitely want to have you back.
Thank you.
Where can people reach out to you if some of this resonates?
My Instagram is Jimmy_Bluff. My website is jimmybluff.com. You can find me on Facebook as well, Jimmy Bluff. So Shoot me an email, anything that I can assist with. Anyone who wants to come down, I think we still have a little bit of room in April at Aldea Akasha. Anyone looking for just a transformation. I'm down in Copacabana Beach, so I do private stuff for people who want to come down and have their life transform as well.
Yeah, if you can get with him in person, I mean, do it.
It's fun. I really have been trying to not overbook myself so I can really give clients that sixth gear all the time. So it's been fun. And it's fun teaching others now that are like, how are you working so fast? So I have to slow down, and it's teaching me even more about my own work as I teach other new professionals. So it's kind of cool how it's come full circle.
Yeah, really cool, man.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Brother Jimmy, thank you. Aaron,
Thank you, my friend.
and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, we'll talk soon.